Okay.
Great. This text that she's in adjournment.
Amy, okay. All right, we're gonna get started. I think Kevin's gonna jump on too. Okay, Kirsten, can we start?
Yep.
All right, good evening, everyone. This is, it's May 20th, 2025. Welcome to the quarterly meeting of the Board of Finance. I'll call the meeting to order. Mr. Mottola, can you lead us in the pledge, please?
Sure. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The members of the public who've dialed in or joined us via Zoom, please know you are muted and will not be heard by board members, and there will be no live public comment until called for during the meeting. We generally welcome public comment on voting items, and I will open up for comment on agenda item 3 when that item is heard. If you're on Zoom, you can indicate now or at any time prior to public comment via the chat function that you'd like to be heard, and please plan to limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Members of the public are always encouraged to send their comments and questions in writing to the board, and you can do so via the website by navigating to the board's finance page and clicking on the board. Okay, so we'll jump right into agenda item 3. To hear, consider, and adopt a bond resolution referred to as a resolution amending and restating a resolution entitled a resolution appropriating $2,859,433 for the costs associated with the replacement of the bridge over Ash Creek, authorizing acceptance of a grant for $2,759,433 of such appropriation, and authorizing the issuance of bonds to finance $100,000 of such appropriation, provided that the acceptance of the grant is contingent upon the town receiving from the city of Bridgeport its commitment to make the required contribution for the design phase. That was that's the original resolution that was amended. It's amended to increase the appropriation from $2,859,433 to $5,109,608 to authorize the acceptance and application of additional grant funds in the amount of $1,587,705 to fund a portion of the amended appropriation, to authorize the acceptance of various credits in the amount of $562,470 to fund a portion of the amended appropriation, and to authorize the issuance of funds in the amount of $100,000 to finance the balance of the amended appropriation. Can I have a motion to hear this item? Mr. Mottola, seconded by Ms. Leclerc. The backup for this item is posted online in the meeting materials, beginning with the resolution starting on page 1. Okay, so let's see here. So to present this item, we have Troy here on the screen. Hello. He's the capital projects project manager. And we also have attorney Michael and Brianna, bond counsel, to this item. So I will turn it over to you guys, unless someone else wants to.
Yes, thank you. It's Troy Deering here, Capital Projects Project Manager. Just to summarize that long statement, what had happened was this is the bridge project coming up for Commerce Drive. Originally, it was accepted as a lot zip grant back in 2017. We put this out to bid in the winter, and the bids came back higher than expected and estimated at that time of 2017 due to various circumstances. But we accepted a low bid, which is New England Roads, Inc., went through a review process with them. And then after everything looked good, we went back to the lot zip program through MetroCog and CTDOT. and got the full amount accepted, including in construction inspection services. That's also required by LOTIP. So we got all the information to them, accepted by them, and the letter of increase back to the town, and that's what we're looking for your approval today. So the project will be starting this summer as planned in June. We have everybody ready to go. We just need to finish the contract stages with them and have these boards accept so that we have full money, lots of funded bridge project that everyone is looking forward to. Thank you.
Okay. Questions from the board on this, Mr. Mottola?
So the only cost to us is $100,000, right? Is that, if I'm understanding this correctly?
That I think the legal team would speak better to that as far as
Is it
I
you
know.
to answer that?
It
Nothing changed.
the 100,000 that was already approved, remains in, and that
Just
was,
accepting a
was
grant.
always the only.
Money for a grant,
This
that's,
is literally 100% what you're accepting tonight is for
that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Okay.
What were the credits that it mentioned? That,
567,000 or
yeah, was that in the original?
562.
um, On resolution, or is that new?
I have to go back.
This is Attorney Andriana. This is Attorney Andriana. I don't have my camera on because I'm driving, but the credits are new. That was not in the original resolution.
And what is the nature of the credits?
My understanding is they are credits paid by the utilities. I don't know exactly which utilities. I assume maybe UI, but for, I guess, some of the work, for the bridge work and probably helping getting the utilities across as well.
Yeah, I could speak to that as well. So we had to add alternate items in that bid because LOTSIP does not pay for utilities. So we put two items in as add alternates, one being the water work that goes to from Aquarion, and also some temporary work for underground utilities with Frontier. And that is equaling about that $500 mark. So those are still going to be fully funded by each utility, and the town will be getting a check from those accordingly.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Leclerc. Any other questions? Okay. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, we can take this to a vote. All in favor of adopting the amended bond resolution set forth in item 3 of the agenda, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye, okay, it is, the motion passes 8-0. Mr. Walsh is not. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you, Troy. Good to
Thank
meet
you.
you.
Have a good night.
You too. Okay, so we're going to move on to item 4 to review the current status of the town's pension and OPEB funds. So the backup for this item is also posted online, beginning on page 11. And Ken Brockfeld, who is the chair of the JRIB, is
Thank
here. Welcome. Good to see you.
See you. I must say, since I've been on the board, it seems to be running a lot more efficiently. You guys,
Your board or our board?
I mean, yours is, since I was on the board. You guys move along nicely.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be brief tonight because I don't have much to report, and I'm also just a touch under the weather, although I answer any questions. So you guys have the handouts that came in the package electronically. You know, I could go through the numbers, but I'll give you one thematic point that I think is, to me, the only really interesting thing I can tell you, because the returns have been very flat, which is that we, myself and Carolyn before me, have come to you for quite a while now, telling you that the OPEB was outperforming the pension, simply because the OPEB was traditionally a much more simple, still is, portfolio that was heavier in equities. And over the last X years, equities have been, far, far, far outperforming any other asset class. Well, lo and behold, recently, equities have been on a roller coaster, but actually going nowhere. You look at where they are, but if you've been following the news over the last few months with the tariffs and so forth, we had the end of the world, and now we seem to have had a big recovery. But bonds, in their own quiet way, have been better performers. So for the first time in a long time, I can tell you that over the last 3 months, the pension outperformed the OPEB, not by much, by the way. Both of them are pretty much flat. The pension was up 0.3%. And by the way, these numbers are as of March 31st. That's the numbers we get. And the OPEB was down 0.3%, 0.36%. You know, I have no comment on what's going to happen going forward, but I think it is of some minor interest that it's probably the first time we've reported that kind of returns. I can't remember in how long. Other than that, I can tell you what I always look for, and to make sure that BlackRock is earning their money, is that they're doing the rebalancing that's necessary on a quarterly basis. That keeps us tight to our targets. I think that's a very important thing that you guys should always ask me and always look at the report and make sure we're not deviating from the targets that we have, meaning how much equities, how much bonds, international, domestic, alternatives, et cetera. So if you look at pages, let's see, for pension, it would be page 9, and I think it was 16 for, 16 for OPEB. You'll see that we're spot on. We're not deviating by even 1 percentage point in any category. In most of them, it's, 0.1 or, essentially nothing. So, nothing to be congratulated for, but it is important that we're doing it. Other than that, I'm going to open it to questions because, like I said, the returns have been extremely quiet, which is not a good thing, obviously, because we have a 6.9 bogey that we're trying to hit. And if the market's going to be somewhat flat, obviously that will have its own repercussions for the town's budget. It's a little early in the year to proclaim what's going on.
Great, thank you. Ms. Leclerc?
How often do they rebalance the funds? With this kind of market, do they do it quarterly? Do they do it monthly, daily?
Oh, you've got me on that one. I actually don't, I think it's quarterly, but I'd have to get back to you and report to you. And I'd also go further than that and say that if the markets were to do something absolutely insane, I think they would do it more frequently.
Thank you, Ms. Leclerc. Mr. Walsh?
So you do it on a calendar year, correct? Ken? A calendar year, not
On a
not the town's fiscal year, correct?
Personal level or?
No, on what you're looking at,
Well,
what you're managing.
No, we get,
I'm not asking about your personal.
oh, okay. Well, I thought you might be interested.
I will. That'll be
The returns you get when you look, for example, at this is a calendar year return. So we are aware of the 6 months. Yeah, but we are aware of the fiscal year returns.
So we're only a quarter into that.
That's correct.
Any of these returns concerning you after 1 quarter?
No.
So we're right on target.
No, I mean,
Okay, where are we on?
there's no target in the sense that,
We have a 6.9 vote.
right, yeah.
So where are we against the 6.9 votes?
Well, like I told you, the last quarter was pretty flat, and the fiscal year to date is about 4.5%. So you have to have a little bit of improvement now in the end of June in order to hit the number.
Forecasting out when you speak to our advisors, are they concerned about us hitting December 31st? 6.9.
Right, but isn't that a fiscal year question?
Yes. On the.
Oh, you said December 30th.
Well,
Okay.
are we looking at this? I thought you said we were on a calendar year basis. We look at this on a fiscal year basis or a calendar year basis? Are we in the first quarter or are we?
Well, I mean, the markets are the markets. I mean, the returns are the returns. at the end of June.
What impacts the ADEC is gonna be the fiscal year.
Of course, yeah, of course, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we gonna hit 6.9?
I mean, I'm not being sarcastic.
No, no,
yeah.
what concerns you or our advisors the most about hitting 6.9%?
I think.
Do they think we're gonna hit
I think,
based on where we are right now?
I'll try and give you a better answer, because it's a fair question. The pension is a long-term investment project, right? With a theoretically infinite, well, not infinite, because the town side will sunset. But, so I think it would be a terrible mistake, even though this board would obviously like to have some sort of certainty or some sort of understanding about where it may be at the end of June. I think it would be a very, very, very big mistake from a fiduciary or intelligent way of managing money to strive for any particular return in any particular time frame. Meaning, because I was thinking about this as we were coming over here today. These pension plans, there really isn't that much play in how they're structured, right? They tend to be passive in the liquid markets now. At least that's the way we are, with a sprinkling of alternatives. Market's gonna deliver what the market's gonna deliver. So there's no levers we could pull to deliver an answer for you. That's the question. I mean, that's the best answer I could give you. There was just no, I mean, the markets looked at those tariffs, I'm not being political at all here, and collapsed a couple of weeks ago, right? And now they pulled back on some of the markets seem to be reasonably happy with that, and the markets have recovered almost as much as they gave up. So we're back where we started.
It seems like some of the deals that have been cut too.
Maybe, yeah. So all I'm saying is that I don't think anybody 6 months ago could have forecast A or B, meaning the collapse or the recovery. So
I guess my question is for this fiscal year, are we gonna hit 6.9 or not? And what's the biggest problems with it one way or the other? Or I know you're looking at it long term. But it's hard for me to ask you a question because that's like me saying, okay, if you think 1 year is gonna be hard for me to ask you the question about, the next 20 years are gonna be harder. Like,
no, actually, I would say,
you know,
no, actually, I would say the next 20 years is an easier answer than the
Okay.
next couple of months.
Okay.
I think over the next 20 years, as long as we don't completely upend the economic system that seems to have worked since the end of World War II, we should get returns that are somewhat in line with the 6.9% that we're trying to achieve over the very long term. Over the next 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, no one, Warren Buffett, no one could tell you.
I'm just trying to figure out, and I'm not asking the question the right way. Is this gonna be a good year or a bad year? I mean, like, just tell me what the year is gonna be. What do you, where do our people think the year's gonna come
You haven't
from?
changed the question.
No, I just like to know how this year's going. And it could be the worst year of the last 20 years, or it could be.
No,
the best
it's,
year
I
that-
mean.
You know, I don't
I
know
mean,
where we are. I'm just trying to get a handle.
So this is, we're end of March would be 2 quarters in, right? In the fiscal year, am I losing my mind? Three. So 4.44 divided by 3 would be 1.5. Add 1.5 to that and you get 6. So we're not gonna hit it, based on that way of asking the question. But that's actually a nonsensical answer. It doesn't mean anything.
Okay, and on the other fund, it's what? We're flat, we're zero?
The
You say flat, I was gonna ask you what your definition of flat is.
both of these funds over the last 3 months were give or take flat. They were also both up about 4.5%.
So both of them are up 4.4%.
Give or, yeah, 4.5.
But just in the last 3 months, it hasn't really changed the needle at all.
Exactly.
Okay, I guess we'll wait till next.
Yeah. By the way, they're great questions. I'm not trying to be evasive. I just don't have.
I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Good year, bad year.
Other questions for the board? Just a quick one. Did you, I'm not sure if I'm remembering this accurately. Did you tell us that your board was, reevaluating the investment strategy
We
around
are.
private equity in particular?
Well, not particular. One of the things a new advisor. BlackRock brings a lot of horsepower to the table. We all heard of who they are, they're
Right.
maybe I don't know, they may be the biggest investment manager in the world. So over the next 3 meetings, plan is for them to do an educational program. We have a lot of new members on the board, and a lot of members of the board have various levels of investment experience, which I think is a positive. I don't think it's necessarily positive for everybody to be in the business, right? We want people who are lawyers and real estate professionals and plumbers and so forth, so that we can put a different perspective. And so they're gonna have a meeting that discusses equities, meeting discusses fixed income, meeting that discusses alternatives, including private equity. And then hopefully at the end of, I wrote down my notes here, I think in the fall, the plan is to sit down and reevaluate. Or maybe stay where we are. And then we'll be hopefully coming to you guys before the end of the calendar year with a real report on what we think the next 5 to 10 years is. But I'm sorry, I apologize. One disadvantage of the alternative, and it's not a secret that I'm not a huge fan of them, is that we do get locked in when we are in. So we have some limited amounts of flexibility over the next, say, 1 to 5, 6 years, because we've made commitments already.
And those are generally 10-year vehicles or,
Yeah, 5, 10 years.
thank you. Mr. Penley?
Well, no, I was gonna ask about some of the committed capital, but I thought last time you guys were talking about making a big rotation out of international.
Sorry?
I thought last time you had mentioned potentially rotating out of international into US, which I'm guessing you're thinking not doing.
Well, there's no question that over the last X months, international has been also a better performer. And it's done what it's supposed to do, which is help provide some ballast to the portfolio. It doesn't necessarily change some personal opinions I have, but that's certainly part of the bigger discussion and the education that BlackRock's going to bring to the table. Our meetings are open to the public. Anybody who wants to hear those.
The other thing, let's just say the same thing, like a follow-up from last time. I think there was some discussion about the, we were looking at performance and we realized that BlackRock only has inception from when they took over as the advisor. Was there any thought of getting, because I think it would be good for the town to have historical performance. Was there any thought of just going to Vanguard and maybe whoever was, I don't know how long Vanguard was the advisor, but just getting the old history from them and having BlackRock do whatever it needs to.
They actually already have started doing that.
Yeah.
And interestingly, the initial, forget what it was. The answer is yes.
Yeah.
They're working on it because, there was some special events that happened in this pension fund over the last 15 years, right? Madoff incident and a few others, the Allianz. And it looks like that may have had an effect on those numbers. So hopefully we'll get yes, I think the answer is we should have
Just following up.
real accounting of what the results were. Yeah.
Good, thanks.
But it is tough for what it's worth. We've had like 5 advisors over 20 years and it's like a game of telephone. It seems like, I don't know why, personally, it's not my area of expertise, the administration side of it. It seems to me like we should be able to get these numbers, but apparently.
Getting all that data lined up is not that easy. Yeah. Okay, well, sounds like we're trying to do something.
Thank you, Mr. Penley. Mr. Walsh?
Glad Mr. Penley brought that up because you weren't here the last quarter. Was that the question, time we asked you about the returns that were listed and we couldn't believe that we'd only made that much money? in
Right.
20-something years, right?
Right.
So we still don't have an answer from our investment advisor saying they're trying to get from previous
Correct.
investment advisors to see what the total returns have been over that period of time.
To tighten them up and make them more accurate, number one. And like I said, the biggest problem they're having is they can talk to Vanguard, right?
Yeah.
But they probably can't talk to people before that. And
What to get sued and stuff.
for example, and so Vanguard's numbers that they pass on to BlackRock are only as good as the numbers that came from the people before them.
Sure.
So however, whether or not we'll get numbers that are perfect. I can't promise you, but I'm starting to, based on what I was talking to Josh from BlackRock, I think we're gonna get better.
Be great if your board can start keeping those numbers, because we may change investment advisors every 5 years. And we might not ever get. So unless you guys maintain them, we're historically probably never gonna get them.
But the issue is that, like, for them to be able to share performance, they've got to get the actual transactional data. So he can't just have like, on this date, it was this performance. They actually have to have the daily transaction. That's why it's going to be difficult for BlackRock to get, to build it out, because they could get wonky stuff from Vanguard. So I mean, I agree, y'all should keep some form of records, but I don't see how you would possibly be able to do performance reporting unless you're gonna run it through.
I agree with that. It also might be that might be a town side, not to pass responsibility off. But the reason I say that is that the pension board, like this board, is transient by nature. People come on and off and on and off. So it might be, maybe I talked to Tom Harris about that. Because the town is obviously more fixed in time, so to speak. It might be the proper place to try and keep those records if we can.
I mean, they would need some system better, right? You know, and they have,
I don't know if the town has the systems to be able to do that.
Probably
I
not.
would doubt it. Other questions? Okay, can I just ask you a quick unrelated question? Are you still advising the town on our,
Yes, but my term of service.
Finish the question. I don't know what you just
Oh,
asked.
fair enough.
so Mr. Brockfeld was, assisting the town as a consultant with our, cash management, not our cash management, but our investing. We have, $200 million or something of cash that, historically had just been in a money market, and we changed strategies, I guess, over a year ago, and we're taking an approach to invest in laddered treasury so that we be more in compliance with our own investment policy at the town and reduce risk, et cetera. So
my term of service comes up at the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
That's what we've discussed with First Select. I can tell you that I've been very happy to help on this issue. David Becker and now Tom Harris have been incredibly helpful and just as knowledgeable as I am. And I'm very, very confident that they can carry it forward. They may want to discuss having a committee maybe that I'd be willing to serve on as a volunteer. But, I think it properly rests at the
yeah,
CFO.
no, and I know you were
Yeah.
helping us in a
Right,
transition
yeah.
base. Maybe, would it be possible to get an update on the portfolio
Sure.
and where we are maybe next month? Okay. Great. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, no,
Any other questions for Mr. Brockfield? All
okay,
right,
thank you
thanks
so
again.
much.
Thanks again.
No problem, thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna move to item 5. Is that Courtney? Hi, should we wait for?
If you don't mind.
Okay.
It'd be good to have the chair here. They should be here momentarily.
Okay. So, yeah, Mr. Peterson, the chair of the Board of Ed, had given me a heads up that they were coming from another meeting. So he asked that if they weren't here in time, if we eventually switch up the agenda items and go through these first. So I think we probably need to vote on that. So I'll make a motion to move up item 6 as our next item. Second, Mr. Penley, is that okay with everybody? All in favor? Okay. All right, so we'll move to agenda item 6, which is to review the town's fiscal 25 third quarter financial update. So the backup for this item is posted online beginning on page 67. And let's see, so we've got Ms. Bossy here, thank you, and Mr. Harris and Ben, I guess. Take it away.
I will kick it off. The backup has a summary of the results through the end of the third quarter. It has an estimate of where we think we're going to be versus budget, as well as a brief discussion in terms of the items that impact us for the rest of the year. On page 2, we estimate that we will be about $2 million better than budget on a net basis. That's comprised of a 1.4 million favorable variance in revenue compared to the budget, revenue budget of approximately $370 million. And we'll be 586 million, or almost 600 million favorable in terms of expenses. So net, we expect to be about 400,000 better than budget versus the second quarter. Revenues are summarized on pages 3 through 5. And just in terms of an overview of revenues, we've collected slightly more than 80% of full-year revenues as of March 30. General taxes account for about 90% of total revenues, and we've collected almost 80% of the general tax revenues. In terms of overall general tax revenues, we expect to be on budget for the year, except for phone line access, where we expect to be about 175,000 favorable to budget. Those funds have actually come in, and that's based on I think it's a retro adjustment for property taxes related to SNET. So again, overall, general tax revenues are going to be on budget, except for the improvement in phone line access revenues. The other big contributor to the favorable variance in revenues is in licenses and permits. We expect to be about $590,000 better than budget. 500,000 of that is in building permits, which is comprised of some major projects that we discussed. The first quarter, we are up, though, over the first quarter, the second quarter by about $150,000. And that is due in part to a couple of large projects that are pending that are expected to be approved this year related to Fairfield University and Fairfield Prep. I think Fairfield University relates to some kind of modification to the library. The other significant favorable variance in revenues is in parks and recs. 320,000 of that relates to golf. Primarily, it's Smith Richardson. And one of the big drivers there is, the weather, of course, is a factor, but the enhancements to the driving range have certainly led to an improvement in overall performance there. The improvements in other recreational areas are due in part to increase in fees, particularly in terms of dock fees, but there have also been some additional outings. So those are the primary increases in revenues. We can take questions on revenues if we have any before we go into expenses.
Questions for the board? Yes, Mr.
What are the reasons why Mr. Calabrese tells you that the ID cards are so off?
I'm sorry.
The ID card revenue is so off.
I think it's
Reasons he's telling you that.
I don't know. I think he's increased the prices. I believe he's increased the fees, but I'm not sure.
Do you know that or not?
Do not know.
Okay. I don't want you to get, I don't want you
He
to.
said he was
If you don't know,
looking to increase fees. I don't know if he did.
we don't know. Can you find that out?
Sure. Caitlin, do you have any notes on that or not?
So I think it was under budget last year as well, but we can ask them.
If it's really under budget, maybe we should reduce the budget.
Well, I'm not sure what the budget is for 26, do you know?
No, I don't.
Yeah, we can find out.
Can you talk to him about that, whether it's gonna be affecting this coming year's budget, or he thinks it's gonna have an effect on it? Didn't know that. The same with the programs under other recreational. It's got same as it was last year, where we off by,
Well, remember, that's your policy. Anything over 200,000 comes back.
Yeah.
To you guys. So that's based on actual. So that's based on actual programs that they pay for summer camps in February, right? And so as a result, I don't know what the budget is for 26, but that's an actual number that comes in. It says anything over $200,000. So their ending balance was 8 under what you guys thought it would be.
Anything else on revenues?
No.
Question from the board on revenues?
In terms of the net change in expenses, the negative changes in parts and recs, which is estimated to be 318,000 over budget, higher than budget. That's due to several reasons. One is additional fees related to the increase in play at the golf course. There's additional construction and maintenance to the golf course. On the favorable side, heart and hypertension, which is estimated to be 630 versus budget, the second quarter has been reduced. And again, if you recall, the reserve was transferred from the general fund to the internal service fund. And the assumption was that all of the expenses would go into the internal service fund. And that was reflected through the end of the second quarter, but we've adjusted that to reflect the net change in the discounted balance for the reserve that will go into the general fund. So that
In
reflects.
other words, can I just read
Sure.
it? So we're paying for the current year expenses, meaning the change in estimate out of the budget.
Right. The remaining favorable variance is what we are referring to as vacancies, which are discussed on, summarized on page 9 of the backup. So basically, we refer to this as vacancies. There are a couple of items that really are reflected here. One is the impact, savings related to positions that were open part of the year have been filled. And that would be in the department head, department increases, other adjustments, as well as positions that were that are currently open, and we're estimating the savings that will result for those that, to the extent they will remain open, the balance of the year. There are some other items in there, though, that don't relate to vacancies, such as when individuals retire, we have payouts for accrued vacation. That's reflected in here. We also have a job reclassification that's reflected in here. That's on the in Department Public Works. So those are the components of what's reflected here. If you have any questions on the individual items, we can go through that. In terms of the schedule, the first column, the revised budget, that is really the original budget adjusted to reflect transfers from contingency. And the next column is really just the actual expenditures year to date. And the next column is encumbrances, which is just the amounts that are going to be paid for positions that are in place currently. And the net difference between those is the available budget. And then the two remaining columns are the ones that discuss. The next to last column being the impact of the estimated cost for open positions that are going to be filled and the cost of filling positions.
Okay, I will take questions from the board first. Questions for Mr. Welsh?
Mr. Harris or Coffee. Mr. Becker's emergency management car, where did that hit the budget? What department did it hit? And where else? New car. With all the bells and whistles.
You know,
You guys don't know where it was paid from?
where was it paid from?
Yeah.
It was paid out of the, well, I don't want to guess. I think it was paid out of the jobs fund.
Jobs fund.
Oh, the outside jobs fund? I don't know.
We can find out exactly.
Is that's where all the cars are paid out
Yeah.
of, right? Okay. So the new cars that go in the fleet are paid out of the jobs fund, as far as I know.
The fleet for the whole town?
For the police cars, yeah, there's 10.
Like town employees? I mean, what's the definition of what's supposed to be paid out of the outside jobs fund? I thought it was police cars.
Yeah, I mean, the 10 a year.
Wasn't that what the, out of the agreement?
Yeah, are there any other cars in the budget? I mean,
I didn't know that emergency management was part of that. I didn't know fire was part of that until that just came up recently as well. It seems like
I could be mistaken.
We'll find out exactly.
I'd like to see the definition of what the cars are. Every expense that's happened out of that fund in the last 2 years. And where that fund is and when you project it to run out.
Okay, yeah, I think we did that. We did that.
Budget.
Yeah, we did it, yeah. Well, we've done. It's in the, actually, it's in the backup for the budget.
And I'd also like to see every invoice for Mr. Becker's car, both on not only the car expense, but every bell and whistle that went into that car and all expenses to do it.
Henley?
So for looking at the vacancy report, the encumbered amount column. So can you just give me an example? I want to make sure I'm understanding it the right way, like finance, your department. So $34,000 in the unencumbered amount. Yeah. And that's for an analyst. It's been vacant since the end of last December. There is that, you're saying that $34,000 is going to be spent.
No, that's net savings. That's the net savings.
The net savings,
Yeah.
because it's not going to be filled.
Right.
Okay, thank you. So $427,000 of net savings from the.
Right.
So that's okay, so on and I like this new format we're getting, but that's equivalent to the number, you used to have a vacancy churn number.
Yeah.
On the
Yeah.
other format.
Well, they're still on the summary sheet, but yes,
Which page?
well, it's the one that shows the 2006. You'll see.
Oh, on the top
page
page.
three
Got
or
it.
two,
So the
sorry.
427, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
there it is, yeah, okay.
Yep.
Okay, so this ties into that, that's very
Right.
helpful.
Yes.
Yeah, because it was always, this is a good format, in my opinion, for the vacancy, so we can kind of see what those numbers are, okay. All right, other questions on expenses? Mr. Rotolo?
On page 7 sheet, is the police expense, is that 170? Is that overtime expenses?
It's a variety of items. Do you have details on that, Caitlin?
Bulk of it is two actually contractual issues, with pay differential. Being expected to be over by 75,000 and education memberships, they expect to be over by like 50. So yeah, there's two, which are both contractual obligations.
Did we just not budget correctly? for
Yeah,
that?
I believe the 26 budget's been increased for those.
And then
That's the bulk of it.
the unemployment compensation said $75,000. I mean, why is that so high? Seems high to me. I mean, I don't think we've been laying off people. Anybody have an explanation for this?
It's been running high. I believe actually, we looked at this right before the 26 budget was actually set, so we've increased the 26 budget for that as well. I think a lot of it were due to the people who were terminated under this new administration, so there was some money that was spent there. So that was the beginning of this fiscal year. I mean, I could give you the breakout between town and school.
That's this fiscal year? Wouldn't that have been last fiscal
Yeah,
year?
because it runs through.
Okay.
Oh, you've got,
First time, yeah.
you've got claims that are,
Go back.
I mean, did we
Yeah,
have?
you have claims that go back.
Yeah.
They have
Did we
long
have-
legs.
I'm sorry, did we have layoffs? Were those layoffs? I know we had some turnover, but.
Well, it was turnover, but they were able to file, I believe.
Normally, if you get laid off, you're able to file for unemployment. If you're terminated for cause, you could file, but you're not.
So there were a couple of people who left, who quit, went to another job. There were two people who then in their second job got laid off. And the state actually looks to the prior employer for a share of that, which is pretty crazy. But it's true. We didn't believe it, but it is true.
What do you mean portion?
So
We have to pay?
you have to pay a part.
There's nothing new. This has been going on for 30 or 40 years.
Well, I,
Policy's been 30 or 40 years straight. Every employer knows this.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
I don't know. either. What is it? What is it?
I just found that out, so I'm new to municipal government. That's one thing. The other is we had significant amount of fraud, which is in the process of hopefully being resolved. So hopefully we're gonna claw back, some of this, like people filing under, other employees, like existing employees' names, and the state doesn't check with the town first. They just pay. And then we find out later, and then we say, well, this person's they're still working here. And so we have to claw that back. And the third is we had a couple.
Can you just, I'm sorry. So I can say, I can file under a fake name of someone.
There is a lot of unemployment fraud going on.
And so,
An issue.
all right, I'm gonna date.
You're wrong in this because I deal with this with my own company. I had a claim come in under my name with my employer. You all get notices of this. As soon as unemployment files a claim, the employer gets a notification of it. You have a certain time period to respond. It's not like you find out like 3 years later that somebody did this. In my situation, just like it's happened 15 times a month in my corporation, you file a thing saying, no, Mr. Walsh still works here. This is a fraudulent claim. You send it in, they don't pay the claim. Either our HR department is not properly on top of this and they're not giving you the proper information, Bill, but you have an opportunity to find the fraud. And they say in the letter to you, if you know that this is not true, please let us know immediately. There's a call-in number where you call in the fraud immediately before the first claim's even paid.
Sometimes,
That's not my understanding.
sometimes claims can be paid and then you could get tested later on.
And we have
Yeah,
one
I mean,
other.
I'm gonna date myself, but I thought like, really, I don't know, I don't think I ever filed for unemployment in my life, but I thought there, in the old days, there used to be like a pink slip or something. I mean, don't you have to prove to the state that you're
Yeah, the
laid
state,
off?
The state comes back to the employer.
I want to echo exactly what Mr. Walsh said. That is exactly the process. And the problem is that the state doesn't give you enough time to turn it around. Most of these things come in the mail and you're like, I don't want to deal with this right now. You put it off and then by the time you go back to do it, it's passed. And so I'm not going surprised if our town HR, I'm not even sure where it's going to, gets it and just doesn't respond in time.
And what?
we have a third-party administrator, UTC or UTMC. And, it's possible that it takes longer than it should, but from what the explanation that I've got is that the state is now just paying the claims, and by the time it gets to us and we see a name that we know is still in town, that significant dollars have been paid out. And the third is we have a fairly large claim that was improperly filed. A couple of that were claims that were improperly filed and paid. And when we found out that they were improper, we filed, an appeal and said, stop paying. And one of them was stopped. And that person appealed and then lost their appeal. So we should be recovering that one as well. And that was the former first select woman, Brenda Kupchik, who filed for unemployment after she lost the election, and got paid out $18,700. But she lost her appeal on that, so we should be getting that back. We should be getting money back from some of these fraudulent claims as well.
How do we recover? Do we have to recover that? How do we recover that? Does the state?
We're expecting, she was not supposed, one of the 11 reasons that you're not allowed to file for unemployment is as an elected official, you're not entitled to compensation. So that was cut and dry and she lost the appeal. But they tend to pay things out at the state at this point. Don't ask questions and they come back later.
I mean, in general, that claim, the fraudulent claims in general. If we, let's say we identify this fraud too late, it was after the fact, whatever, or we find out a claim was improperly paid for whatever reason, the person wasn't eligible. Can you just, what is our mechanism to recover the money? Or do we have to go after the employee or ex-employee? Like, how does that work? And you guys might know this, but I don't.
There's an appeals process for the improper ones. There's an appeals process. And if you lose
Once it's determined that it's improper, how does the town get reimbursed? Is it up to us to?
It's up to us. So we told our third-party provider this was improper.
So does the state?
That it was improperly,
Okay.
that the state improperly paid this out.
When you're saying improper, like, okay, you said, like, what I've heard tonight is that there are people filing fake claims. And then
There's
there's
fake claims and there's improper claims. I think it's
and
different.
that have now been resolved, and so there's two different things. So, but in
Two
both
different
instances,
The fraud is someone probably in another country files under they get a list of employees and they file under that employee and the state has paid it out without, from what I understand, without first asking us if it's a legitimate
so
claim.
that's a whole different procedure to get it back. Okay, what about you've got a
A
claim?
proper claim is someone who
appealed.
files that should not have filed. There's a list right on the website of 11 things. If you're an elected official, you cannot file. If you're terminated within, or if you leave within 60 days or 30 days, you can't.
But does the town have to go back and get that money, or is the
Yeah,
state?
we've got to
cover
go
it?
back and get that money. There's an appeals process. If they want to appeal, otherwise the state will come up with a remedy. And it could be, repaying. I think we're expecting a credit for Ms. Kupchik's $18,700. We expect a credit from the state on that.
And I won't ask any more because I don't know about this, but just like, so for the claims that somebody in whatever China is filing, what's that, like, how do you get that back?
That's like, it's going through a process with the
Okay.
state. So we filed and said, this is fraud.
So does the state ultimately have to eat that if they find out that they've?
I sure hope so. I don't think we have an answer. I've asked that question and I'm not sure any of these have been resolved yet. The last couple of years, there's been a lot of fraud.
Okay, I know Mr. Walsh has a question. I would just like to, I think it would be helpful to understand the HR process and how we do this. I don't know if this is
It might be helpful to have the UTMC
Yeah.
rep on the line.
And maybe, or have internal audit, look at this. This might be a good, just from a process standpoint, because to Mr. Meyer's point, if we're, because I think we've all dealt with some form of this from some government agency where you get a notice and you're like, okay, some money was due last week or something, you get paper mail and it doesn't work. But
If there's an opportunity,
if we're not getting adequate notice, that's an issue. If we are getting adequate notice and our internal process is such that we're not responding
that's an issue
timely,
too.
and we're putting ourselves at risk,
But
then yeah, but okay.
I've been told that that's not the case, that it's the former that's been paid out. And by the time we find out about it, it's been paid out and we've got to then go and try to get it back. And if there's a way to avoid that, certainly need to make that happen.
I apologize, Mr. Walsh.
This is a huge problem. And this Board of Finance has got to get its hands around the process, like you said, Madam Chairwoman. We need to have this third party come, and I want to hear from them. We need the town attorney here to explain what the process is. It doesn't sound like the administration exactly knows what the process is. I've gone through this process. Mr. Myers has gone through this process. I go through this process every single month. We stop fraud every single month before the first payment is made. So something is going on here. We need to have HR, we need to have the third-party vendor, and we need the town attorney, and we need to set this up as a line item at one of our future agenda item at a future
I
meeting.
agree.
And get to the bottom of this, because
Maybe we
I
can.
don't understand how
Mhm.
our third-party administrators not getting the letters, either they're having a problem and not performing their duties and letting us know, or we're not doing our job, what we're supposed to do when they send us the stuff.
Or the state is paying and then notifying us afterwards. I mean,
I know, but Mr. Myers and both we get.
you work for private companies, so
It doesn't matter municipality, Bill, it's.
I wouldn't jump to,
It's whether you're an employer and it's whether you.
but if you're wrong, will you
Taxes.
apologize?
Yeah, I would, I would.
No, all right, let's agree.
I will, and I will say one last thing.
Yeah.
Using prior employees' names publicly is a breach of their privacy and is actionable. And Mr. Matola knows this as well.
I don't agree with what you.
Okay.
No, that's just not,
Saying,
What was said is public information.
it's public, it's a public hearing,
all right,
but if you're okay with, you know,
Wait, what's a public hearing?
there was a public appeals hearing for Ms. Kupchak's unemployment. And it's a public docket.
Okay.
So we should be recovering that. That's one thing that we should be recovering and hopefully, but you know,
do you think we?
you don't want to know,
September?
close your ears.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, let me, maybe even June. I mean, I don't know. It depends, like the third party, you know, I think it would be helpful to understand the process because frankly, you know, I had the same question during the budget because I knew that Mr. Harris told us that the history was that we, you know, claims have been going up, but it didn't make a lot of sense to me because we haven't done a RIF, you know, we had turnover certainly, but it was voluntary turnover. So it just seemed odd that this spiked. And in the budget process, the last couple years, I remember we kept cutting unemployment because it was low. And then this past year, it seemed to be very high. So I'm glad we're addressing this because, I mean, not that it's millions of dollars, but it's, you know, clearly there's questions around the process and other things, and we should make sure that we, make every effort to recover every dime that we're entitled to, and that we figure out where these notices are going and if we're responding timely and if we need internal process changes or whatever. But I will, I'll circle back with you guys tomorrow and let's figure out, you know, scheduling third parties is not necessarily, but it would be good to get our arms around this sooner rather than later. And actually, I think we were potentially going to have Ms. Simpson here in June anyway, because we have, I promised an internal audit update. So that might be a good time to do this.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, Mr. Curley.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the dialogue on this. Anytime you hear the word fraud on a topic like this, it certainly should raise everybody's eyebrow. And I recognize that the $75,000 variance that's recognized here is not just completely fraud or improper, but I have a few questions for the administration. Do you have a sense as to, you classify these claims in two categories, one being fraudulent, the other one being improper. Is there any sense as to the magnitude of those two categories?
Yeah, there is, well, like I mentioned, you know, Selectwoman Kupchak is about $18,700. Plus there's one other that we believe is improper, possibly for a few $1,000s. And then the rest would be, the big chunk of it would be fraud. And we, you know, under applications, under names of people that work for the company still. And that's about $130,000.
For the year?
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Oh,
So we would actually be running under budget if it were not
Crazy.
for this fraud and improper filings.
Right.
Okay. Is it possible for the administration to provide this board with a more detailed summary of that so we
Yes,
understand?
we have the detailed summary and we've asked our HR department all the questions for the explanations, and the explanation on the fraud that we've gotten is people file with the state pays it, the state then sends the town the bill. We're self-insured, and we owe the state the amounts, and then we look at the line items. Sometimes they're names of people who sit right next to us, you know, so there's a lot of fraud. So there should be no question that that we should get credited for those amounts.
Okay, so then that leads me to my second question. For the fraudulent items, where the state has made these payments, and I guess we've made them back to the state, or how does the actual cash flow work? And the key to the core to my question is, who are we seeking reimbursement from? Is it from the state or is it from the individuals?
From the state, because the individuals,
They're gone. They're
for the
not
fraudulent ones, they're not, people that you can just track down.
Okay, so we expect to get roughly $130,000 back from the state for the fraudulent claims that should not have been processed.
I certainly would expect that.
Okay, and then for the
I guess that assume, I'm sorry, Mr. Curley, but if there's that magnitude in Fairfield, I imagine this is happening everywhere.
Yeah.
So if I'm the state, I would look to say, well, gee, we notified you, but you didn't get back to us in time or something. I mean, do we?
If that's the
If
case,
that's the case, okay.
then we have
So we would be able to.
that's not
recover.
not the explanation that I received.
Okay, got it. Okay, so there's,
FOI that stuff from the state, everyone for the town of Fairfield that they sent out.
so you,
So Madam Chair?
sounds like you're actively working on this issue. Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Curley.
Yeah, that's okay. So that takes care of the fraudulent piece, but for the improper pieces, you mentioned the 18,000, 19,000 to Ms. Kupchak and the roughly 2,000 to another individual. Are we seeking reimbursement from those individuals, or are we seeking reimbursement from the state for those?
That is up to the state. They'll have a hearing on who reimburses that, but an elected official should never have been approved for.
Right.
It should never have filed, but it should never have been approved. And
They should
so
take responsibility.
I think they will have to. Well, they'll either take responsibility for, getting it from Ms. Kupchak, or they'll have to take responsibility because that should never have happened.
Okay, so we are comfortable that the party that we're going to collect from that is also the state. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
I would expect that, yeah, and probably in the form of a credit, I'm told.
Yeah. Now there were other items that were paid to Ms. Kupchak over the years for both payroll deductions for benefits that she was supposed to pay back to the town and severance that she collected that she was supposed to be paid back to the town. Have those been collected?
Yes, both of the severance was collected out of her select person's salary, and the last payment received on that was last month.
And what was that amount?
That was 11,000 plus, maybe close to 12,000. I can't remember the exact amount.
And the benefits that were not properly deducted?
That was, I believe, about 3,500. She paid that in one lump sum.
Got it. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, it definitely feels like there's a process improvement opportunity here, and I agree with you, Ms. Charlton, Madam Chair, that internal audit would be great to look at this and provide some suggestions on improvements to the process.
Yeah, and also, one thing that would be helpful to understand as we look at the process is who these notices are going to. Sometimes it doesn't matter what government agency is sending, whether it's the IRS or whether it's state employment, unemployment agency or whatever. Sometimes that can be a glitch too. If you have, things going to individuals who may change over time or whatever, that could be an opportunity for something to not get routed correctly. But yeah, so we'll shoot for June and try to get all the appropriate parties and information so we could get more information. Walsh?
Yeah, for that June meeting, can we get every letter that the state's received from the unemployment department the last 12 months? We could have a legitimate conversation about this at our meeting.
I don't know how many that is, so I'll leave that up to you guys. We'll talk about what we put together. If we need all the letters or we need a list of people, but I'd be happy to reach out to you.
No, that's fine. And then, the next year, we should keep an eye on this. Can we have this talked about at our quarterly? We'll stand on this. Thank you.
I do. Thank you. Yeah, and thank
So
you,
I asked
thank
this-
you, and also Mr. Yeah. I was gonna ask about hydrant and water, but this was more interesting. No, and it's helpful to get the perspective of you all who have dealt with this in your respective businesses.
It's part of the, it's really part of the business process.
Yeah,
You need to jump on this right away. HR department.
okay. Any other questions about unemployment, or any other questions on expenses?
I think you guys mentioned what the golf course variance was. Could you just repeat that for me?
On the expense side?
Yeah.
It was drainage
Drainage, okay.
and maintenance. There was also some increases in payroll costs, additional.
Um. Maybe this is for Ms. Bossy. Oh, I'm sorry, Jim, did you have a question?
This financial summary is great. It shows the remaining percentages, because obviously, a lot of the stuff is timing, and this boss has been great about always putting that in our forms about what's timing, and if it's 25%, some of the recreation things, it's more top heavy. The fourth quarter is gonna be a big quarter, so it could be 60% off, but we make it up in that quarter. Is there a way, Tom, to, Caitlin, to, highlight the ones we don't think we're gonna hit for the year? Like bold them or something like that. If like, this isn't a seasonal problem. Like, even if it's seasonal, we're never gonna make that percentage up. So we get to get a chance to see, like, what are the problem ones we have? So we could have more focused questions.
Sure. I mean, we can be more, I mean, when we do the summer, we try and capture that sort of.
But on one page, it would be a lot more information, because then it would direct us to what departments we should actually be digging down into the information. Look at, it would provide the paragraph, spoken to a department head, and it explains why that is. It would just be a lot easier to do that, as opposed to sitting there and reading every single explanation, most of which is rightfully so, timing issue.
Yeah, sure.
See, that happens.
To follow up on your point, though.
Yep.
And that's why I don't really look at the percentages that much, because you incorporated that into your, into the variance estimate, right? So if it is seasonal or it's not seasonal,
If
Like
it's
you can-
timing, there's no variance.
if it's timing, there's, okay. But I understand, and then the explanation for that is back in the rate of stuff. Okay.
But if I see there's like 6 departments in a row that's timing and it's not highlighted, I know I'm not really gonna spend a lot of time on that. I really wanna focus my questions on the areas. First, read more details. Think about what the explanation is. So we can focus on those.
No, that's helpful. And I also want to agree with you that, listen, this kind of input is helpful, and I do want to thank Tom and the team that,
That's good.
the report, is more robust than it used to be, and it's really helpful.
Yeah,
I find, so
I'm
thank you.
gonna be a bigger fan of all of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say in the last 15 years since I've been on it,
Yeah, this is,
continually improves. I'm just, now that we have it to this far,
yeah,
maybe I'm just trying to make it easier for
Agreed.
me. That I can just focus on.
Should make it so easy if you don't have to ask any
The areas that I should really be focused on.
no, I think, for example, and I'll just throw one thing out, like having the vacancy report in here with the actual calculation that ties into the summary is we haven't had that in the past. It's really helpful. I mean, you always did the work, but now you can sort of see the details and what it is. That's helpful.
We'll say that.
The additional summaries are helpful in addition to the munis stuff. Are there other questions on expenses? Tom, did we miss anything?
I think you captured it.
remember at board meetings, I always used to hear people say to me, is there something I should have asked that I didn't ask?
Yeah, normally shouldn't volunteer, but I think we didn't talk about investments. I think, with investment income, I think we're pretty comfortable there. I mean, we could be a shade under. I ran a calculation today, depending on how much gets allocated to PCA, but I think we should be pretty close to the budget.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So for next month, when we get a look at the investment portfolio, some that, this year we seem like we're relatively close, but next year I think we're kind of in the Wild West there. Who knows what's gonna happen? So, maybe when we approach that topic, and we can talk offline about this, it would be helpful to get not only an update on this year, but where we are next year. I know that we had focused for next year on that portion of the portfolio that wasn't fixed in duration, and that we thought we'd be able to reinvest at certain levels. And how are we doing so far in terms of what's turned over since we passed the budget? And all those investments that have matured, what have we been able to reinvest at? And does that align with the assumptions that we made during the budget process?
We have had, since we did the budget, 3 or 4 bonds that have matured. They've all been rolled over at rates that are higher than we have in the budget. So, versus the budget, it looks good.
Good to know. All right, any other questions on this? Okay. So, you wanna come up? All right,
Thank you.
all right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Ben, thank you, everyone. All right, so I guess we'll move on to item 5, back to item 5, to review the BOE fiscal 25 third quarter financial update. So before we get started, I don't know if everyone on the board is aware of this, but I do believe, Courtney, this is your last meeting with us.
It is.
I heard that. Unfortunately.
Yes.
No, she's not retiring. She's leaving us. She's cheating on us.
Yeah, I'm moving on to a nonprofit organization, sadly, but I was working with Serious Fun, Paul Newman's camps for medically challenged children as their CFO. So I get to work for days a week. Otherwise, I would have stayed at Fairfield forever. It's just thank you.
Congratulations on the opportunity.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Congratulations. We will miss you.
Certainly miss you.
And you've been terrific to work with. Thank you for everything.
Yes, I appreciate everyone here and all the collaboration, and it's been a wonderful experience. So
That's great.
yeah. And I'm still here to help transition to year end because I know, so I'll still be here in the background supporting Terry Devaney, who's our interim CFO. So
When's your last day?
Friday.
Oh, Friday. Oh, all right. I guess I was thinking June 30th or something, but Friday.
It should be. I mean, that would be the appropriate thing to do, but they're asking for me to come earlier, so I'm still here, support.
Thank you again for everything. Okay, so so for the board and the public, the backup for this item begins on page 39. And Courtney, turn it over to you.
So thank you so much for the opportunity to share the third quarter results. If you'll recall, at the close of the second quarter, the district faced a projected shortfall of about $466,000, mainly due to a couple of factors, our substitutes, because of more family medical leave that we've been seeing this year than had been projected. We've accounted for that in next year's budget. Some deficits in special education that we had spoken about in the second quarter. It got slightly less favorable in the third quarter, and I'll talk a little bit more in detail about that. And then in addition, utilities that we talked about with the Board of Finance at the budget preparation meetings, that our utilities electric rates were much higher than projected, which the town is experiencing as well. So to respond, we placed funds in a holding account while we monitored key risk areas like utilities, transportation, substitutes, and then also favorability in the health insurance, and then the state's excess cost reimbursement, which we've spoken about before. Special education reimbursement, that's the formula is 4.5 times the per pupil amount that we spend. We get reimbursed at a percentage of the total amount above that per kid. So what that means is if a student costs $20,000 on average, you know, 4.5, so I'll just pretend it's, 120,000, thank you. So at 120,000, but our special education kid cost 140,000, we get reimbursed a percentage of that 20,000 overage. That's how that works. And unfortunately, this reimbursement fluctuates and it went down to as low as 59% this year. So we're seeing that gap in special education. Fortunately, the governor did restore a small amount of money, which is why what I'll get to now, we're at a favorable balance of about 68,000. We got to the favorable balance by pausing on some things that we were doing. We have to do this year. And so some schools expenses we paused on. Also, we had some efficiencies in the IT accounts because our new IT director really looked at all of our meetings and streamlined a lot of things. Why we saw some favorability, some reductions to the budget for next year, but we were able to repurpose some of those funds to cover some of our other needs. So overall, what changed? We held the money aside in school accounts, IT, and then our health insurance got a lot more favorable from what we were projecting in the second quarter. I think we mentioned, and I think Mr. Mottola had some questions in the budget preparation. We gave the history, so we had typically seen a much higher family enrollment for many years. I think I went back maybe 5 years, you asked, or 7 years. And now it's shifted for the last, this year and the 1 year prior to higher single and single plus one. So how we budgeted that next year is a little bit conservative, but still there may be a little bit of favorability in the budget next year as well on the health insurance side. But this year we do have that money to offset our needs as we go into the fourth quarter. So we're looking at a balanced budget for year end. Again, utilities, we had a 12.6 reduction in electricity. We did have a reduction of 12.6% in electricity use, but it was coupled with an 18% rate increase in electricity. So overall, yeah. It is a little. Yeah. So we won, but we didn't, we won in the, it's still in the red. So negative $342,000. Would have been
Less electricity, I guess.
We are.
Use 18% less.
We used 18% less. I guess we need to do 40% less, but we're positive trend on the usage, negative trend on the rates, resulting in a need of 340,000 that we're able to cover because we were able to pause and some spend in other areas towards rent.
I'm just, the amount that was restored to help the special ed reimbursement from whatever the governor did, how much was that worth to us?
400 and I believe 80,000.
So that was the bulk of the change from Q2?
Yeah, it was a bulk of the change. And there were a couple other things that shifted, obviously, as we got additional information. So from Q2, we usually hold the utilities flat. So as the utilities came in, we talked with you about it in the budget time. It was about negative 420. Now we're negative 360. It might get even a little bit better as we do.
We haven't really had winter yet.
Yeah, we haven't had a winter, and this winter was mild. So, you know, relatively speaking, and hasn't been very, very hot this summer yet. So, or late spring. So those things had changed. But we did have to hold back a little bit of money. We still have 300 and I think, so 370,000 held in reserve while we watched those accounts through year end. I'll pause there to see if there are any questions.
Sorry, Mr. Peterson, we did flip the agenda around, but you were still too late.
My kudos for you to be very efficient.
But she did a great job. So let me turn it over to the board for questions. Questions, anyone? Ms. Walsh?
So all in all, we're not gonna have a problem we're not gonna be in the red.
We won't be in the red this year.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And I'll come back to make sure, but I don't think I need to.
If we are in the red, you won't be back.
Right? We have to make sure that's the case, other than what you're talking about.
No, so yes, we do actually a daily look at where we are. So every day we do a dump against our projections from the system to make sure we're in line, checking on that daily. And then in addition, we have the monies in the holding code.
Sure.
Yeah, so we don't release those. We have plans to spend those, but we don't release those until we're sure that the things that we're watching. You know, FMLA returns become utilized. So once those are known, then.
Any change in the busing generally, you talked about that. Or not.
We are, that's a next fiscal year
Yeah,
task, but we are talking about some things in our most recent Board of Ed meeting, we're talking about a possible adjustment to the accommodate the budget decline. That involves high school using like over enrolling high school buses and asking high schoolers to opt out in exchange for parking pass. So the kids get parking passes, opt out of the bus. If they want to get back on the bus, they surrender their parking pass. So we're kind of working that out. That in terms of how full the buses are, high school is really the place to go. So that's trying to work on that first.
any further additional help that could come from the state before fiscal year end?
Not that.
No, well, again, we, in terms of our budget adjustments for 25-26, we've decided not to vote on those until after the session in Hartford ends.
Okay.
Just to make sure if there's any surprises that come our way, any more revenue. I'm really counting on that, but should it happen, we're kind of prepared to roll with that as we go forward. I have not heard anything that leads me to believe that we are in a bad place in terms of Hartford. I think that additional revenue is a vanishingly small possibility, but we'll wait and see what transpires up there before we make our final decisions.
And what is the date that you're asking teachers or administrators to tell you?
Yeah, it was.
It was November.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's okay.
That's fast, yep. And we have them and,
Do people change their mind, like, and then not change their mind saying coming back, but do additional people say, thought about it since November, people still giving you notices? No.
yeah, we did have one or maybe two, not much, you know, most told us by November 1. We had one that rescinded, they did change
Oh,
their
okay.
mind in the other way, but, that's the right to do. So, but, right, yeah, so we're on target with our budget projection for the number that we, of retirees.
Thank you, Mr. Welch.
Thank you.
Other questions? We decided to go easy on you because it was your last night. I wish we had brought the papers.
Got here, I'm like.
We'll have to come easy set of questions. An easy set of questions is the best I could do. Oh, Ms. Vitale.
I know that based on your current, it's not looking like you're going to have a surplus, but has there been any other discussions of a non-lapsing count if at year end there is money left?
Short answer is no, just because that's not our baseline anticipation. I guess if that emerges, obviously, you know, the state law has changed about how we get to do that. We get to do that of our own accord as the Board of Ed now. I would still want to loop in financial authorities in the town before we make any decision on that basis.
I just asked just because I appreciate that very often we found ourselves, when I was on the Board of Ed, that you're holding it so close, but then things change with electricity and sometimes with transportation at the end of the year and you don't find.
That's fair, and I think.
Until after the fact, and it's not, it may not be a huge amount of money, but.
I mean, I think what Courtney was talking about earlier is kind of stepping down those funds that were on hold. Like they were much more earlier on in our thinking, and now we're this news as we go forward. So I don't know that I anticipate a big spend out at the end of the year, but if that emerges, then I'm happy to have that discussion and we'll have it in public and I'll get other boards' attention.
When Ms. Laborious, I wish you luck and we're going to miss you and it's been a pleasure working with the Board of Education as chair and the last couple of months as a part of select. So
5 years? Is it 4? But
It feels like 24.
I think we interviewed you with masks on, so.
Yeah.
All right, well, again, best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you again, and my apologies.
Take care. All right. So moving on, we're going to go to item 7. To hear, consider, and act upon the reappointment of the independent auditors for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025. Motion to hear this item? Mr. Meyer, seconded by Ms. Leclerc. So I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Matola, who's the chair of the audit committee, who can give us an update on this item.
We had a meeting about 2 weeks ago, I think it was, and just got sent, had Joe Sinafani of PK Info, Connor Davies. Just give us a brief update of what's gonna happen. And Lori, correct me if I'm wrong, the bottom line is really the conclusion of this upcoming audit really isn't any different from last year. I don't think really there's substantially changed. The fee has gone up from 133,630 to 117,620. I believe, I could be wrong, this is
It's year 4. I think this might be year 4. So yeah, he gave us a 5-year fee proposal, which doesn't obligate us to reappoint them for 5 years, but it's kind of locks in the fee from their standpoint. So it's just an inflationary increase. Yeah.
so. That's really it. There was nothing new or unusual with respect to what Joe told us at our audit committee. We just have to vote to approve this, and sign the paperwork, and you can get going.
Questions?
How often do we go to RFPs on this? I know we got
5
nobody
years.
nobody else in here the last time.
5 years, yeah.
One more year.
One more year. Okay.
Yeah, the last time we went to bid, I think there was just a lot of stuff going on in the market with the firms. There were some mergers, and there aren't a ton that are in this space. None of the larger firms do the work anymore. So, but it was an unusual time. I think there was just a confluence of factors that led us to not get additional bids. I think it may be different next time.
Sure.
We'll have an opportunity to reevaluate, which I think is a healthy thing to do, regardless of whether or not we're satisfied with the service, and I think we have
We
been.
have to.
But yeah, I think it would be next year.
I think it's great. I mean, I've liked to work with Joe's firm that I've seen. But, you know, I was surprised nobody else bid on it, but speaking to my friends in the accounting world, there's just certain areas they don't want to be in anymore. They're just focusing on where they think they can make the most money. Because a lot of the smaller ones taken over by equity firms.
Yeah, I think.
They're driving
part of the issue-
profitability.
Yeah, part of the issue is that the nature of the work for public companies has changed so much that now it's really a year-round audit. You know, the amount of work that's done for quarterly reviews is a lot. So, you know, summertime with June 30th fiscal year ends used to be a slow season. And so a lot of firms would just take up that work, even if it didn't make a lot of money, because they could, you know, get employees trained and keep people busy. And that just hasn't existed. I mean, since Sarbanes-Oxley, that's just not a thing anymore. So the population of firms that do this work has shrunk, but there are still a number in Connecticut that are, you know, I think, very reputable and would compete for the business. It was just funny timing last time we went out to bid. So,
A lot of other companies didn't get, towns didn't get anybody
yeah,
responding
yeah.
to their RFPs.
Yeah, it went through a time, again, when you have things like mergers and firms are consumed with their own internal stuff, like that can make a big difference, so. All right, any
I
other,
just have another question in regards to what the audit committee thinks. Is there any areas that you think that we should be spending even a little bits of money on? Any additional areas of or exterior audit to do anything on? And I'm asking Amy as well. I see her on the phone call now, so, on the.
Not on the committee. Mary's
yeah, well,
Oh,
Mary.
you're on it. I thought you were, yeah, okay, the three of you, any
So-
areas that you guys see that we should be?
I think what we talked about, so we didn't have the payroll review done.
Yeah.
Earlier this year, and we wanted that to be done before the town made any decision on outsourcing. One thing that I don't know if we raised this during committee, but I think would be a worthwhile endeavor, and I don't know if this is our auditors that do this, but I think we still have a problem in this town with documented policies and procedures. And we see the results of that in internal audits frequently, because when we have turnover, things fall apart. And we have all kinds of mistakes that happen, and inevitably you go back to root cause, and it was like someone quit, and there's vacancy and no one knew what they were doing coming in. So, I think that's a project that probably requires some concentrated effort and would be worthwhile doing. I feel like there was something else too that we talked about.
In terms of the policies, I've asked Joe to look at the existing policies that we have and, you know, to the extent there are gaps, to identify those. He's promised to give me a proposal by the end of the week.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah, because that would be outside the scope of the audit. So thank you for doing that. Mary, I can't remember. Is there anything else we talked about?
No, I don't think so.
I think, I don't know whether it's external or internal. Some of the stuff.
Some of it's for Connie, I think. for
Yeah,
internal
I was
audit.
just gonna say that, like one of the things we talked about at the last meeting was, you know, the first selectman had that vehicle audit done. And, you know, just to try and get our arms around all the issues, and that one, certificates of insurance, there were a bunch of things that were identified that we haven't addressed yet, but part of the problem with that was getting our manager on board and putting some focused effort on it. So there were definitely some internal audit follow-up items. I think this unemployment,
I think
again, that's policies and procedures, right? It sounds mundane. But I thought that, you know, generally policies and procedures was a big one.
I know that, looking at my notes from the last meeting for the upcoming, I think what Connie's gonna be doing, if I'm reading my sloppy handwriting correctly, she's gonna be doing an IT audit, right? By the way,
That is underway. That's currently.
School zone ticket revenue audit?
Oh, for the cameras, for the new speed cameras?
Yes, yeah, but that, so, Board of Ed credit card purchases she's gonna look at. And Human Social Services Relief Programs audit. Oh, we've had some questions about that, right?
I think that was a potential if she didn't do other
Yeah.
things, yeah.
So, and she said she's gonna look at the library too, you know, potential type thing. I don't think she's ever, I shouldn't say ever, but. And then as you mentioned, vehicle audit follow-up, I have a question mark there, so those are some of the things. I think she's coming to us in June,
She's
right?
coming to us in June, and it's a good question to ask then. I mean, personally, I'm glad somebody mentioned IT. You know, one of the really interesting eyebrow raising things, whatever, that came up during the payroll review that Joe did was the whole topic of access controls. You know, I know he was trying to understand, we had specifically asked him to look at access controls, who has authority to do what, and you know, is access to the systems appropriately restricted based on, you know, your necessary job function. And when he was trying to get that information from Dave Kelly, I mean, it was literally like 50,000 pages. It was like, you know, as people come and go, nothing ever got updated. It was a disaster, you know, so it was to the point where he couldn't even do anything with it. So, you know, that's a bigger area where I believe it would probably be helpful to get some outside expertise. And that might be an area that's appropriate to look at next time we upgrade Munis, or, you know, in conjunction with something like that. Cause that was it was wild. It wasn't even that. There were definitely some instances where there was, you know, administrative access that was, you know, probably given to more people than was necessary. But it was more just the issue that you couldn't even figure out what was going on because it had never been looked at. And the volume of information that he had to get was impossible to review. So I think those were the big things.
How do the three of you feel about, now that the purchasing policy is in place and all employees have been trained for a while?
It's not in place.
That's not the case.
What do you mean?
There's still a subcommittee that's trying to finalize it. Nobody's been trained on it yet.
Oh, not everyone's been trained?
Well, I expect people have been trained on it, but there's still a policy that's not finalized yet.
Well,
It's not, it's.
Voted.
I would say-
Voted on.
I know we voted on it.
So we're.
Oh, you're right, but there's pending changes, right?
Yes, so we're looking at that. We had to cancel our meeting on Monday, because Adam Dolan was out sick, so we're not gonna be able to report back to you in June how we had hoped. But we are looking at, I think it's 3 different things of tightening up the language. One was that since the policy was written and accepted by us, the town came out with their own ethics policy that differs. And so it's trying to see if the purchasing policy is more strict, so we can leave it as is, or we could try to mesh the two together or put one as an appendix of the other. So that was one of the things we were looking at. The other was, a protest policy that if you, your bid wasn't accepted, we're trying to tighten up those requirements. So you know what the policy is, the procedures to go through if you don't agree that your bid wasn't accepted. So I think he wanted to tighten up that. And then
The MROs,
Oh, the MRO, yeah.
the MROs and what the intention was and
so the efficacy of it in a time when you can order something online, basically.
That was, I know when Mr. DeWitt and I looked at it, it kind of seemed like a relic. No one really knew.
yeah, so it could be that it's obsolete because we have Amazon now that it's not really needed. Or was it a mechanism to help our local vendors and to give them some support? Or was it a mechanism to save the town by using vendors in town so they didn't have to drive back and forth to like New Haven to go to a plumbing supply store when there was one in Fairfield or Bridgeport? So that, you know.
Yeah, just to say on the ethics thing, the policy, the first paragraph of the policy, incorporates by reference the standards of conduct in the town charter and the town ethics policy. Then later on in another paragraph, it paraphrases the standards of conduct. And then later it references things. So I think it's more just basically just cleaning up. I mean, I don't think there's anything, if the employees had read it, they know what the ethics policy are, just maybe.
Yeah, I think the dollar levels are different, and that was my major concern with it. That, the town allows X and the purchasing policy has a more strict number. Okay.
Well, I guess I'll hold my thought till next year, but I think after this is all settled and everyone's been trained, after a little time's been going by, like a year, I don't think it'd be the worst thing to have Mr. Senafani's group come in and test it after a year. And so we get on it right away if retraining needs to happen, or if there's some types of problems that we could adjust in the policy because of some standard issue that keeps coming up that we can work with. I don't know. It's just,
Yeah, and-
I would just like to test it because
No, I-
putting it on the shelf and just hoping that the problem goes away is not really.
So
Agree.
they've been trained because there's been no training on it. There has.
So he just went to the Board of Ed for the first time and did some training that he thought was very successful there and would like to expand that a little bit. But with turnover, it's not we don't have an onboarding process that when people are hired, they're automatically trained on the policy. And that needs to get put into place. And so whenever there's someone new or someone leaves, things start to fall through the cracks.
It'd be great if he put together a video and explained this for an hour and a half. And that our
it.
employees can then just watch it in the first week of them while they're here.
That's all you have to do.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
CHRO does it.
That's what we do at our job. Whoever's the expert on it.
Yeah, you gotta sit down and watch it.
Exactly.
Good ideas. Okay, well, we're still on item 7, so if there's nothing else there, why don't we vote on the motion? So all in favor of appointing PKF O'Connor Davies as the independent auditor for the town for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025, please raise your hand. Okay, it is unanimous 8-0. I think we lost Mr. Stark. Okay.
Up there.
All right, so move to item 8, if you're any communications. Is there anything, Mr. Gerber, Mr. Becker, Mr. Harris? All right. Take an motion to adjourn? Mr. Walsh, seconded by Mr. Claire. All right, all in favor? Thank you, everyone.
Students.